And yes, the pig head is still here. Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Charlie, and this week we are going to be going over the food that I made for the last 3 weeks of July. I made a video already of what I made the first week of July with all the food that I got out of my freezer. Now, I wasn't using only the food out of my freezer to cook. I was using any food that I had in my fridge or pantry, and I also was going grocery shopping. That's probably one of my mistakes, and that's why my freezer is still kind of full. It hasn't gone down too much. You can go back to the video that I made for the first week of July and see the different meal ideas that I came up with. I made it through most of them. There were only 5 meal ideas on here that I did not get to, but I plan to make them in August. So in this video, we'll just be talking about the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th weeks in July. Anything that I made that had something from the freezer. The 2nd week in July, I actually started on July 12th because the first week ended on July 10th, and then I believe on the 11th we just had leftovers. So I started the 2nd week on July 12th, and it actually went for 10 days till the 22nd. So just like the first week, it went 10 days. My weeks are rarely 7 days just because I menu plan for 7 days, but I can usually stretch it even farther with leftovers and other meals that I come up with. I wanted to show my inventory for my large freezer and my small freezer. There were quite a few things I did not get to, including the rooster, especially like in my small freezer there were a bunch of bones. And I said that at the beginning that I probably would not make any more chicken stock because I had plenty in my freezer, and I still do. I probably could have saved more grocery shopping this month, but because there was the 4th of July, my daughter's birthday, there was family in town, there were just many things that I decided to go to the store for, so I ended up spending a bit more than the $300 that I wanted to spend, but that's okay. I'm pretty sure I saved money. I'm gonna have to figure that out. At the end of this video, I was gonna share all the groceries that I bought to see how much I spent in July. I've organized this video so all the breakfasts, lunches, and dinners are grouped together. You can easily navigate to what you want to see with the timestamps in the description. This first breakfast I made using chocolate chips from our freezer. It was sheet pan pancakes. I doubled the recipe so we could eat these 2 days in a row. One of the pancakes I put chocolate chips on, and the other one I put blueberries on. The last several years I've tried to make it a point to make healthier meals. For example, instead of making pancakes with all-purpose flour and sugar, I now normally make GAPS pancakes, which consist of squash, almond butter, and eggs. They're grain-free and make us feel much better than a traditional pancake. But sometimes I'll make the less healthy version, especially if I haven't planned well. I usually do a good job of planning dinners, but breakfast and lunch can often get overlooked. In a perfect world, all our meals would be healthy, but it's just not always possible. For this next breakfast, I pulled out some spinach from the freezer. I was really glad to be using it up since it had been in there for well over a year. I don't really worry about how long something has been in the freezer. I usually use things within 3 to 6 months. When I don't, it's probably a sign that I shouldn't freeze that thing anymore. I used these frozen cranberries to make both cranberry juice and juice pulp muffins. The juice was for one breakfast and the muffins were for another. I've made cranberry juice a couple times now, and I'm not sure what happened to the juice this time. It was really concentrated. I ended up adding a bit of water to each cup to make it more like a juice than a concentrate. We also got out the last of the chicken liver I had in the freezer and added 1 small cube to our scrambled eggs. I started out by putting 3 of them on the pan with the eggs and quickly realized that 1 would be plenty. so I set aside the other 2 to use for another meal. My kids aren't really keen on liver with scrambled eggs. They usually only take a few bites. For the juice pulp muffins, I got some ground flaxseed out of the freezer. My daughter helped me make the muffins the night before we were going to eat them, so they would be ready to eat in the morning. We didn't have enough cranberry pulp for the recipe, so we added some grated carrots as well. They turned out really good despite the cranberries being so tart. I also made oat milk ahead of time so we could have a cold beverage to go with the muffins. I ended up making chocolate milk with it. I just put in some cocoa powder, honey, salt, and an egg. It was a very simple process, and the immersion blender made it super quick. Super delicious and easy. We loved the muffins warmed up a bit with a little homemade butter on them. And for this last breakfast, I made a nutrient-dense smoothie with freshly juiced carrots, apples, and celery. And I added some frozen butternut squash to it. I actually took the squash out of the freezer the day before so it wasn't frozen solid. We just love having smoothies all summer long, if you haven't noticed from all the smoothies in my videos lately. Alright, let's move on to lunches. For this first lunch, we had some frozen homemade meatballs, which are both gluten-free and dairy-free. I'll link to the video of how to make them in the description. We ate the meatballs with ketchup, which I also made and had stored in the freezer, and mustard, raw broccoli and hummus, sauerkraut, baby bell cheese, and even homemade tortilla chips with salsa. The chips were something we were trying out. They're easy enough, but I wouldn't want to stop buying chips unless someone else in my house wanted to make them. I've already got enough to make as it is. For this next lunch, we used the diced pork roast from the freezer on our quesadillas. We just ate the quesadillas with chips, salsa, and diced avocado. So in order to make this next lunch, I had to get out the chicken breast and make chicken lunch meat. It's very simple, and it's so much cheaper than store-bought. You can find a link to the instructions in the description. We just cut the meat into slices and served it with raw veggies and hummus, sauerkraut, and cheese. And for a look at real life, my kids wanted to show that we also ate them with these cheese puffs. They were left over from a picnic lunch we had that week. You might be interested in this next lunch if you have a sick kid or want ideas of what to feed your kids when they are sick. Chicken stock or broth is high on the priority list when my kids are sick. And on this particular day, I also gave them leftover ground beef and rice with butter, sauerkraut, and veggies with hummus. They also had watermelon to keep them well hydrated. With the lunch meat that we had left over from a few days before, I just diced it up and used it in these chicken spinach salad jars. This is a lunch that I absolutely love because it's make ahead and so yummy. I'll link the recipe below. We were having a hard time deciding what to eat for lunch on this particular day, but my daughter suggested nachos and I thought it was a great idea. We had some corn in the freezer that we could put on top, as well as ground beef in the fridge. We ate it with salsa, raw veggies, and some raspberries, which I found for a pretty good price. Next up, we have freezer beef and bean burritos. But I didn't make them for the freezer. Instead, I wanted to make them so we could take them to a friend's house when we went over to visit. So I got out some chicken broth from the freezer so I could make the rice and filling. I got it out a day before I started making everything. And it did take me a couple days to make everything because I made each component when I could. I started with the rice and then just kept it in a container in the fridge until I needed it. I used some diced onions I had in the freezer to get the filling started. I also used the minced garlic from the freezer for the filling. Once the filling was complete, I let it cool off and then put it in the fridge as well. The day that I put them together, I just had to shred the cheese, and then I assembled everything. My daughter rolled up some, and I rolled up the rest. When we went to our friend's house, we just had to put them into the oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes. We also brought an easy sauce made of salsa, yogurt, and taco seasoning as a dip for the burritos. I got in the freezer for one of these lemon cubes and let it thaw so I could use it in the tuna salad I was making on this particular day for lunch. But we need to take a quick break so I can share with you how to open a jar from the grocery store with a spoon. I learned this trick years ago from my mother-in-law, and it works 100% of the time. So you hit the lid all the way around with the side of a spoon. All you have to do next is just twist it, and it should open right up. Let me know in the comments if you do this as well, or if you have another trick we could try. This tuna salad was really so good. I didn't follow the recipe exactly. I added things that I had in my fridge and used substitutions, but it still tasted wonderful. And I had to get in the freezer for some broth to serve with it. There were several days in July that I was feeling pretty bad digestion-wise, and I knew it was because we were eating more carb-heavy foods, especially with flour and rice. So when I could, I tried to make something that I knew would be light and not make me feel so bloated. When I want my digestion to work better, I usually turn to bone broth, and if I keep drinking it and lay off the carbs, it works really well. I served the tuna salad over a bed of lettuce with some sauerkraut on the side and sipped on my bone broth. My kids added cheese to their tuna salad and ate it with chips and watermelon. Some of my kids are very creative in how they eat their food. My oldest daughter likes to use tortillas and make quick tacos, so she filled up a tortilla with the tuna salad and ate it like that. And some of my kids eat the fruit first because they don't like the main dish. All right, our first dinner from the freezer was this lentil chili. All I had to do was reheat it. I did add a little broth for added moisture and to make sure it didn't stick while reheating. We ate it over some leftover mac and cheese that I had made for my daughter's birthday. You can actually see that mac and cheese in the previous video. For the next dinner, I got out ketchup and chicken and rice soup from the freezer. No, I didn't plan to serve the chicken and rice soup with ketchup drizzled over the top. I decided to make French fries that day because it was a lazy day and the weather was gloomy. We even had a small thunderstorm. So the ketchup was for the French fries. The French fries were a bit time-consuming to make, so I was grateful we had a main dish that was very easy to reheat. The French fries recipe I followed was from Recipe 10 Eats, and before you fry the potatoes, you actually boil them for a small amount of time, which is why you see them sitting in water here. To serve the fries, I mixed the ketchup with mayo to make fry sauce. And after the storm passed, we had a beautiful rainbow in our backyard.
Let's get out some pork chops. Pork chops. Pork chops. Oh, it says chicken breast. Is it chicken breast or pork chops? Tell me. It says chicken breast.
I'm just playing around with my kids. As you can see, we had pork chops for dinner that night with mashed potatoes. I added sweet potato to regular potatoes for a more nutritious side. For the next meal, I got out taco meat and refried beans from the freezer. I just slowly reheated both over low heat on the stove. I do believe I added a chicken stock cube to the taco meat. We ate tostadas with the refried beans and taco meat. I love this kind of meal where everyone can put what they want on their plate. My kids especially love that. I had to get more ketchup out of the freezer for this next dinner because I needed to make baked beans. I really love baked beans. I just wish I could make them with less sugar and they'd still taste good. I served the baked beans with hot dogs and a salad with lots of different vegetable options. I know hot dogs aren't particularly healthy, but we like to have them a couple times each summer. This next meal is probably one of my favorites. I hadn't made it in forever, probably since last year, so I was so excited to finally make it again. It's called tortilla eggs, and you cook a fried egg with a tortilla and cheese, and then you can put whatever you want on it. So we serve it with refried beans, salsa, and guacamole. I'm telling you, it really hits the spot. We still had plenty of vegetables left to make another salad to eat with this meal. Next up, we were making pizza. I usually always have ham in the freezer, so we make Hawaiian pizza instead of pepperoni. We also had pineapple in the freezer, so it worked out nicely. We like to have pizza on Friday nights usually, the same night we watch a movie. We've had this tradition since my youngest was just a baby, so nearly 9 years. If you're curious, we were watching Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, on that night, and my kids, who are 13, 11, and 8, were very much into it. I thought it would be too scary for my youngest, but he was just fine. He's seen all the Star Wars movies as well, so I guess he's used to scary stuff by now. I hadn't seen Lord of the Rings in well over 15 years, and I was surprised to shed tears near the end of the movie. Let me know in the comments if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings too. I can't not tell you about my husband's pizza here. He's from Argentina, and they do pizza differently. They have this really popular pizza that they top with ham, roasted red bell pepper, green olives, and anchovies. I'm not a fan, but I try to make sure he can have his pizza at least every few months. This time I didn't have any green olives because someone ate them all earlier in the week. But he still loved his pizza. My oldest daughter actually likes his pizza too, so she's just a little crazy. I just love when the meal I'm about to make is already made for me. This taco soup was ready to go in less than 30 minutes, but I didn't have to do anything but put it in a pot on the stove and turn on the heat. I like to heat it up over low heat so it doesn't melt too quickly and start sticking on the bottom. To add a little bulk to the soup, I got out the diced pork roast and dropped it in. It thawed quickly because the soup was simmering when I added it. I served the taco soup with cheese, guacamole, plain Greek yogurt, and tortilla chips. It's a little hard to tell what I'm getting out of the freezer here. Sometimes I don't label my bags. Shh, don't tell anyone. But it's leftover meat from a barbecue we had. Now, in Argentine culture, barbecues are called asados. So from now on, at least in this video, I'll refer to this meat as asado meat. My daughter so graciously agreed to cut the meat up into smaller pieces for me so I could work on other things for this meal. Don't be fooled, it's actually pretty easy to cut the frozen meat with a sharp knife. But my daughter is still learning how to use a knife, so it was taking her a bit of practice to cut it. My other daughter was chopping the garlic for me. She likes to have a bowl of water nearby when she's chopping garlic so she can put her sticky fingers in the water after peeling all the garlic.
No, I'm just doing it for my mommy.
They both were a big help. I already had diced onions in the freezer, so once everything was prepped, I got the onions going first in the pot. My youngest child, who's a boy, helped me make the sauce. I don't get him in the kitchen enough because my girls are usually helping me. But I need to start being better about getting him to help me as well. For this meal, I was making tuco, which is an Argentine term for pasta sauce. Tuco, unlike Americanized spaghetti sauce, is full of flavor and actual meat, not just ground beef or turkey. Okay, I know, I'm dissing on American spaghetti sauce. Honestly, though, I really don't like it. Every once in a while, I'll buy a jar of spaghetti sauce, and nobody in my family likes it, especially my husband. So I make tuco when we have pasta. My mother-in-law taught me how to make it once, and I took tedious notes. And 15 years later, it tastes a whole lot better than it did when I first made it. At least 9 times out of 10, I am making pasta on a Sunday. That is a tradition in my husband's culture as well. He grew up having asados on Saturday, and they would use the leftover meat from the asado to make tuco with pasta on Sunday. That is, if there was leftover meat. My husband was one of 5 children. When they were older, he and his 2 brothers ate a ton of food, if you can imagine. So once everything was in the sauce, I added the asado meat. I left the 2 chicken drumsticks whole because the bone can add a bit of flavor to the sauce as well. All that was left to do was let it simmer for at least 45 minutes. So I really don't prefer spaghetti because it has gluten. But it was what I had on hand at the moment, so I went with it. I would really like to start buying gluten-free pasta. Or maybe I should learn how to make pasta with gluten-free flour. Tell me in the comments if you have a favorite gluten-free pasta, or if you've tried making gluten-free pasta from scratch. Next up, I needed to get some chicken stock and diced chicken out of the freezer so I could make Hawaiian haystacks. Did you grow up eating that? I had it the first time when I went to a friend's house, and I loved it so much that I asked my mom to get the recipe from my friend's mom. So my mom started making it, and the rest is history. But the recipe my mom used had cream of chicken soup, and I have always made it with a roux instead. The last time I made anything with cream of something soup was probably at least 15 years ago. So normally the roux I make uses flour and butter, but I wanted to keep it gluten-free and dairy-free. I don't have a great gluten-free substitute for the flour, so I just used some arrowroot powder instead, and I used coconut oil in place of the butter. The other thing I had to replace was the milk, so I used coconut milk. I thought it was fitting anyway since these were Hawaiian haystacks and coconut should be a star ingredient. I do think next time I'll try a better gluten-free flour because the arrowroot powder made the texture of the sauce turn out kind of strange. The best thing about Hawaiian haystacks is the sheer amount of wonderful toppings to choose from. From the cook's standpoint, however, it can be time-consuming to get them all ready. It's a good idea to start preparing toppings either the night before or as you have time from breakfast until you eat the Hawaiian haystacks for dinner that night. I can't believe I put on all those toppings and totally forgot the chow mein noodles. So I had to take a quick video of my husband's plate to show you one with chow mein noodles. Only a few more meals to go. For this meal, I got some taco meat out of the freezer. I just reheated the meat with a little chicken stock on the stove. I made this sauce for our taco salad using plain Greek yogurt, salsa, and taco seasoning. You could easily just mix everything up with a spoon, but I used the immersion blender to make it more like an actual sauce. This taco meat was made with chuck roast and cow tongue. Yes, cow tongue. My daughter actually made it as part of a summer camp class from Life Skills Now. We were impressed, and honestly, The tongue is probably the best part. It's really good for you too, so total win-win. You can use any kind of lettuce you like as the base of your taco salad. And then you just crumble on the tortilla chips and put on some meat, cheese, tomatoes, avocado or guacamole, sauce, green onions, or any other toppings you like or have on hand. This last dinner is one that I actually shared in the previous video, ham fried rice. Since I have so much ham, this is one meal that is on repeat. If you don't have leftover ham, it's easy enough to use leftover chicken, pork, or even beef if you want. If you don't have any meat, you could also use more veggies and make it a veggie fried rice, which is what I made a lot before I started making ham fried rice. Sometimes I will chop up carrots really small and use those along with the peas, but I will boil them for a minute or two first to make them less crunchy. This time though, I had some already grated carrot in the fridge, so I added that instead. I add the ham straight from the freezer, and it really only takes a minute or two to thaw once it gets in the skillet. Like I said in the last video, ham fried rice is awesome because most of the ingredients can be stored in the freezer until you make it. And if your family likes Asian-inspired meals, they will love ham fried rice. Okay, so I told you at the beginning of the video that I didn't get around to making the rooster in July. But I did end up making it a few days into August. So I wanted to share with you how we ended up using it, if you were wondering. I think the only way to really enjoy rooster is to slow cook it or make it into soup. My favorite way to make it is in the Instant Pot because this method of cooking gets the meat really tender and soft. Rooster can often be quite tough, so it's important to either slow cook it or pressure cook it. I just basically made a meat stock of it. Meat stock starts with meaty bones, water, vegetable scraps, and some salt. If you add apple cider vinegar, you will want to add it and let everything sit for at least 30 minutes before turning on the Instant Pot. The heat can kill the beneficial enzymes and live cultures that are present in the apple cider vinegar. And that would defeat the whole purpose of putting it in there if you did that. Oh boy, if you've made it this far, you're a trooper. And you probably want to find out how much I spent on all my groceries in July. I did my best to keep track of all my receipts and take quick videos of all my grocery hauls, but I know there were a few that I missed. The overall total that I spent based on actual receipts was $579.52. But I didn't do a good job of figuring out the actual amount I spent on groceries versus things like dog food or toiletries. I estimate that the total I spent with the few receipts I couldn't find was right around $600. That was quite a bit more than I wanted to spend, and it's pretty close to what our grocery budget is in the first place. So there's a couple things that I'm going to do different next time. First, I'll expand the challenge to include everything in my pantry and fridge as well as my freezer. Second, I will have a set budget to work with each week so I can't overspend. And third, I'm going to meal plan strictly around what I have in my house rather than add meals. That's not easy to do when there's a holiday or a birthday or family is in town, which was our case in July. But I think it can be done if I choose a month where I know nothing like that will happen. Well, I hope you got a lot of really good ideas from all the meals that you just saw me share with you. It is always wise to use the food that you already have in your house before you go grocery shopping. I cannot emphasize that enough. Anytime you make a meal plan, first go through your freezer, go through your fridge, go through your pantry. Use that food because you will spend so much less at the grocery store if you start with what you already have. If you have any questions about the meals that you just saw or about anything about freezer inventory or using up what you have in your freezer, just leave a comment down below and I'll address it either in another future video or I'll answer your question in the comments. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you next time. Bye. Oh, you stupid fly.